Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It being 11 o'clock, welcome to this special virtual meeting of Midlothian Council, and a special welcome to Suzanne Ross, who's deputising for Alan Turpey as the legal officer for the Council. A copy of the virtual meeting protocol has been circulated. I draw your attention to the following. You are aware that when meetings are held, the Council should mute your microphones and only activate them when invited to speak. Once you finish speaking, please remember once again to mute your microphone. Members who wish to speak should do so by raising the raise hand option and lower your hand once you speak. With regard to the business of the agenda, it may be necessary to ask members to vote. Votes will be taken by way of a roll call. The minute will not include the roll call vote unless a member has been successful in moving a roll call vote in terms of the standing orders. This meeting is public and is being recorded, and a copy of the recording may be uploaded to the Council's website. Could I ask Verona MacDonald for details of any apologies for today's meeting?
An apology for absence has been intimated from Mr. Bourne, the religious representative. Thank you.
The order of business is as noted. Are there any declarations of interest? You may declare them at any point during the meeting. There are no minutes of the previous meeting. The public report is 5.1, and I would ask Fiona Robertson to speak to this Glencorse Primary School report by the Executive Director.
Provost, Councillor Johnson has her hand up.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Can I put in apologies for Councillor Kenneth Baird, please?
Thank you. Noted. Fiona Robertson.
Thank you. Good morning, Provost and councillors. In August 2020, the Council authorised a statutory consultation to be undertaken on the proposal to permanently discontinue primary education at Glencorse Primary School and to extend the catchment areas of the neighbouring schools to include the Glencorse catchment area. This report advises Council on the outcomes of the statutory consultation on the proposal, and the accompanying statutory school consultation report, and for reference this can be found page 9 onwards within your documentation, provides full details of the process undertaken, the representations made, and Education Scotland's independent and impartial report on the proposal. The Education Service undertook the consultation in accordance with the Schools Consultation Scotland Act 2010, having regard to the statutory guidance. The Education Service also sought and took account of further guidance provided by the Scottish Government and Education Scotland on conducting a statutory consultation during the current COVID-19 restrictions. The Education Service went beyond its statutory duty in terms of the number of meetings held during the consultation period, and for reference, these can be found on page 17 of your documentation. The Education Service also provided the parents of children at Glencorse Primary School with a further opportunity to come together to discuss the consultation final report earlier this month. And as confirmed by Education Scotland's Her Majesty's Inspectors, the Council was proactive and flexible in seeking ways to consult and engage with stakeholders. So a total of 99 responses were received during the statutory consultation period, 96 survey responses and 3 other responses received by letter or email. Of the 96 survey responses, 31 agreed or strongly agreed and 64 disagreed or disagreed strongly, and 1 gave no opinion. 2 submissions were received once the consultation final report was published, 1 seeking confirmation that mothballing the school June 21 was offered to parents, and the other submission was from a member of the community who had responded during the statutory period and expressed the same views on the proposal. So a number of common points and themes emerged from our review of the responses. Some of the key themes were concerned with the costs for the school either being too high or that the proposal was about savings, the quality of education provided at Glencourse Primary School, which has not been questioned, and that this proposal provides further considerable educational benefits for children, as set out in paragraphs 3.3 and 3.4 of the final report, and that's pages 15-16 of your documentation. The growth in the area, which we know can be accommodated at Morriswood and Roslin Primary School, safe routes to school, with some respondents commenting positively on the potential to improve transportation arrangements, and others expressing concern about the walking routes to school, which is actually currently the case for the school, given the road is a commuter corridor. And also the impact on the community, which has been considered as part of our discussions relating to supporting transitions, and also to the proposed new A701 school and the potential for this school to work in partnership with the Glencourse Community Centre. A summary of the key points raised can be found within pages 22 to 28 of your documentation. So section 3 of this covering report sets out the legislative duties placed on the Council and the Education Service to make adequate and efficient provision of school education across the county, and ensure that this provision is directed to the development of the personality, talents, and the mental and physical abilities of the children to their fullest potential. As you know, the school roll of Glencourse Primary School has fallen over recent years, from 82 pupils in 1998 to 7 pupils within one composite P4 to P7 class this academic session. It is a distinct possibility that only a few pupils will attend the school session 21-22. Whilst the Education Service recognises the quality of education provision offered at Glencourse Primary School, it considers the very small number of children attending will benefit from the wider range and breadth of learning experiences available to them within other learning environments and within a wider peer group at the same age and stage. Education Scotland's independent and impartial report, which is at page 70 within your documentation, states that if the proposal is implemented, that Her Majesty's inspectors agree that a wider range and breadth of learning experiences will be available to children within other local schools, and that children will be working with a larger peer group closely aligned to their age and stage. Curriculum for Excellence sits at the heart of what Midlothian Council is committed to achieving for its children and young people, and is intended to nurture successful, effective, confident and responsible children, able to learn and utilise learning in a way that responds to the increased variety and pace of change in today's and tomorrow's world. Children are entitled to a broad general education delivered through experience and outcomes to develop not just their knowledge, but skills for life, learning and work. For example, discussion and debating skills, skills in presenting, performing, are much more limited within a smaller class group. And within the health and wellbeing curriculum, children working within a larger class at the same age and stage are able to engage in discussions with each other on aspects such as relationships and sexual health. This is much more challenging in a reading group or maths group of 1, or if you're the only child at a certain stage. In addition to its duties regarding the quality of education, the Council also has a statutory duty to secure best value in terms of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, in maintaining an appropriate balance between quality and cost, and having regard to economy, efficiency, effectiveness, equal opportunities, and the achievement of sustainable development. In line with the Schools Consultation Scotland Act 2010 and statutory guidance, the Council is required to include financial information within any proposal. So as referenced within the proposal documentation, should this proposal be implemented, there is an estimated annual revenue budget saving of over 187,000, which equates up to approximately 3 teachers. The cost per pupil per year at Glencourse is £23,362, which is significantly higher than other Midlothian schools, and local government benchmark framework figures indicate an average cost per pupil in Scotland of around 5,000 to 6,000 per pupil in the primary stages. The Education Service has made it clear during the pre-consultation and statutory consultation period that the proposal is based on what supports the best educational outcomes for children. However, if approved and in line with our duty to secure best value, the proposal will assist in ensuring that the education budget is more sustainable and more equitably distributed into the future. And Education Scotland's Her Majesty's Inspector's independent and impartial report states that the proposal will allow the Council to deliver best value through more efficient and effective use of resources. So based on the fact that there are clear educational benefits for the children of Glencorse and the ability to secure best value, and as confirmed within Her Majesty's Inspector's report, the Council was asked to approve the recommendations for the discontinuation of primary education at Glencorse Primary School, to extend the Morriswood and Roslin Primary School catchment areas to include the Glencorse catchment area, to offer the remaining pupils the choice of attending Morriswood or Roslin Primary School, to provide any future primary school aged children with the choice of attending Morriswood or Roslin, and to provide school transport for all children affected where there's no safe walking route to school and or the distance is more than 2 miles. The Education Service understands the significance of any decision today in terms of the community and is very aware of the impact on the Glencorse community if the Council approves this recommendation, and is committed to supporting children, families and the community moving forward if the Council approves these recommendations. If the Council does approve, then the Education Service will notify the Scottish Government of its decision, and as set out in section 15 of the Schools Consultation Act, Scottish ministers can call in a decision to implement the proposed discontinuation of education provision, and the Council will require to wait for confirmation from Scottish ministers on the outcome of their consideration before implementing the proposal. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Fiona. The recommendations are set out at page 3 of 105. This is what we as councillors will be called to make a decision upon. I wonder if I could, first of all, however, cover a legal point. My understanding is, although we're obliged to consider the financial background of this decision, essentially the decision must be made on the grounds of the educational benefit of the children. Is that correct? Perhaps Mr. Turpey, who's here, or possibly Suzanne Ross or Fiona could advise how we should evaluate these factors.
I think, Chair, if I can pass perhaps that curveball to my colleague Suzanne Ross, who's much better versed in education matters than I am.
Thanks, Alan. No, Councillor Smale, your understanding is correct. The financial implications must be included in the paper because it is a consultation to close a school. However, the relevant decision is the educational benefit to the children.
Thank you for that. Could I ask for contributions from the floor from the councillors? Councillor Parry.
Thanks, Provost. Probably be unsurprised to hear that I have an opinion on this proposal. I guess the first thing to say, and it's fairly obvious, is that this year and last year has been, absolutely unbelievable. Nobody thought that, we would be sitting here in the middle of a pandemic. And arguably our young people have been disproportionately affected by what's going on. They've had their schools closed, they've had a huge amount of upheaval. There's real pressures on children's mental health. The impact that they've had on their education as well is huge. And so while I accept what Fiona is saying there about the kind of process that we followed and how it's legal, it might be legal, we might have followed the process, but that doesn't make it right that we're sitting here in the middle of a pandemic with young people facing huge challenges in their lives. And here we are sitting around, talking about closing their school. And you'll see from the responses from those young people, they don't want their school to close. And I think they probably didn't want their school to close anyway. And here we are in the middle of a pandemic, when we're looking at, smaller class sizes, more space for kids in schools. And again, we're here talking about closing their school. And I think there's two additional points that I'd like to make before I close. One is just about the process of this. Again, you know, it might have been legal, but whether it was fair or not is an entirely different question, and I don't believe that it was. First of all, from the initial Zoom call, the initial announcement to parents, I think that was really cruel, the way that was done. And I think throughout the process, we've seen little engagement. You know, the numbers haven't been huge in terms of, you know, some of those consultation meetings that otherwise probably would have been quite busy. And that's worrying. It's worrying because it means that people haven't had their say, but, you know, they've also not had a chance to, you know, for example, talk about it while they see each other at a bus stop, or, you know, those opportunities for engagement that we would have had before aren't there. And so I think there's a flaw in the process. And the last point is really about Midlothian West as a ward. And, you know, I accept some of the points that Fiona's made, and I can almost see why, you know, it could be acceptable for somebody in a different ward to think that this was a good idea or in the best interest. But personally, for me, from Midlothian West, when I consider that I've got two other schools in my wards that are threatened with closure at the moment, St Matthew's and St Margaret's, and Auchendinney, who has no bus service at all whatsoever. And we found out at a planning meeting just a few months back that now they might not get that new primary school that they thought they were going to have as well. So the impact to Auchendinney as a village will be strongly felt, but the impact across Midlothian West is something that I have to bear in mind as well. And I will absolutely be backing the parents and the young people and the community and the 64 people that disagreed with this proposal, and I won't be voting for it today. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you indeed for that. Could I have other contributions?
Councillor Muirhead has his hand up.
Thank you. I'm scrolling down. Thanks for your help for that. Councillor Muirhead.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, first of all, I'd like to thank Fiona and her team for the efforts that they've made over a long period of time to address this issue and of how we're going to deal with the concerns of the continuation of Glencorse as a Midlothian primary school, and for keeping the cross-party education working group appraised of the developments over the time and seeking our views during these different stages. I do, you know, question Councillor Parry's comments about it being cruel. To describe the approach that the Education Service has taken to consulting and communicating as being cruel, I think is just totally unrecognisable to me. A lot of efforts have been made to make sure that people have the opportunity to express their views at a number of stages during this process. I think it has to be noted that attempts have been made to take a more flexible approach by mothballing the school, allowing further consultations on its future to be made over a longer period of time. However, that approach required the consent of parents, and it was rejected by them. This left the council with no alternative other than to progress with proposals to discontinue the provision of education at this facility. The Education Service has provided us with the recommendations that are placed before us here today, with the evidence on which these recommendations are based. And it's for us as elected members to make a decision on whether we accept the evidence and agree the recommendations or not. I understand, and I'm sure everybody here does, that there are strong feelings within the parent body and the wider community when any school is proposed for closure. But as councillors, our duty is to consider the facts, and our primary responsibility, as has already been said, is to maximise the education benefits and breadth of opportunities for pupils. While I accept the fact that you know, that is the basis of this decision that we are taking, but we also have to be cognizant that we've got a duty to deliver best value through the most efficient and effective use of our resources. There have been concerns raised about the consultation process and the timing of the meeting, and that's happened again today. at the time of the meeting, sorry, at which the results of the consultation was published. The timetable for this process was known well in advance, and there have been many opportunities for interested parties to lodge their concerns and their views. The statutory consultation took place from 24th of September to the 13th of November. Council also facilitated further meetings for parents after the publication of the outcome of the consultation in December, although it wasn't obliged to do so, as Fiona has already mentioned. But colleagues, the fact that we have a school with 7 pupils that hasn't got the space to have nursery provision, at the time the report was produced, the likelihood was that the number of pupils at the start of the next school year would be 4. There have been no new pupil intakes to P1 at this school since 2017. I think these are the kind of facts that we need to address when we're making a decision here. And in considering this, we don't just have to take the word of our officers. As Fiona mentioned, part of the process of proposing the closure of a school is for the Education Scotland HMIE to produce a report providing an impartial and independent view on the proposals. The report, which we'll all have read, concludes that moving pupils from Glencorse to Morriswood or Roslin would bring potential additional education benefits. And it is also worth noting, particularly that Education Scotland were of the view that the council had been proactive and flexible in its engagement with stakeholders. It has to be said, we all recognise that Glencorse provides quality education, but with one composite P4 to P7 class, it cannot provide the wider range of learning opportunities that working with more children of the same age and stage would bring, which again was highlighted in the HMIE report. If the proposal is accepted, the remaining pupils would be given the choice of which primary school they wish to attend, Morriswood or Roslin. And where there's no safe walking route to the school or the distance to the school is more than 2 miles, transport will be provided. Children who live in the current catchment area of the school and who become school age will also be given the choice of which school to attend. In providing these assurances, I think we're covering an issue of concern that was raised and highlighted in the Education HMIE report. Colleagues, I think it really is time for us finally to make a decision on these matters. And while I look forward to hearing any other contributions for any other elected members, I would like to move that the council accepts the recommendations detailed in this paper. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Muirhead. I'll wait until more of the debate has taken place before we find a seconder for you, and Councillor Parry may also want to take a position more formally, but could I ask, first of all, Councillor McCall and then Councillor Leigh Douglas to join the debate. Councillor McCall.
Sorry about that, Provost, hit the wrong button there. Unsurprisingly, I am backing Councillor Parry's situation. While Glencorse Primary School is in Midlothian West, I have had a lot of people contact me from the wider area, from Pennycook and also from Auchendirnie, who do feel that they've been given a raw deal here. And the fact that there's not going to be a replacement primary school for Auchendirnie, we thought that was the plan all along. I'm afraid I just can't agree to this. I think the people of Glencorse and Auchendirnie have been badly served with this. And given the amount of people who have spoken to me about this, I'm afraid it's just not something that I can go along with. I would like to make the point as well that there has been stories floating around the community that people, when they've gone or wanted to put their children into Glencorse, have been strongly advised not to. And people from out with the catchment area who wanted to send their children to Glencorse were told, no, you're outside the catchment area, you can't go to this school. And that causes me a lot of concern as well. It's almost as if we've been determined by hell or high water to close this school, and I'm extremely disappointed that that's where we are today, and that's all I have to say on the matter at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Leigh Douglas.
Hi, Provost. Sorry, I'm having problems with my camera and microphones. Can you hear me okay?
Very good.
Yes, okay. Okay, so I'd like to thank Fiona and team actually for our regular updates that we've had at the cross-party working group. And I completely support Jim's comments on the way that the procedure has been carried out, and I think it is inappropriate to say that you know, this was a cruel approach. It has to, this is from my view, it has to be recognised that education of the Glencorse children is priority, but it's quite clear that the closure would not diminish their education experience. So after all, it's the Education Authority's duty to ensure this, and let's be mindful that the Education Scotland report appears to support this proposal. I'm not sure why it would be thought that children from Glencorse would not benefit more from the wider range and breadth of learning experiences available to them at other schools. We should take into account the additional benefits of mixing with a wider peer group, ensuring mental and physical development, but brings opportunity to develop social skills that become key to a child's future and opportunity. I just wanted to make those points.
Thank you. Russell Imrie.
Sorry, Provost, just was switching on camera and switching off mute. Provost, I wasn't even going to contribute to this particular debate today. I think the road that we've gone is the road that is the right and correct one. But I can't sit by and listen to Councillor McCall coming out and telling me, with regard to Glencorse, which I've lived in for over 30 years, what the people want. The catchment area for Glencorse, may I just remind everybody, was actually Eastfield Primary School, crossing two main roads, and surprise, surprise, people tended to actually vote with their feet and send their children to Morriswood, and eventually I managed to get the boundary changed, or the catchment area, should I say, changed, so that Glencorse parents could send their children automatically to Morriswood if that was their choice. Secondly, and more importantly, when the army houses were being built a goodly number of years ago, up at just off Bellwood Road, we took a developer contribution from the army in order to extend Morriswood School. So again, there was never any talk whatsoever about the army children, which were something like maybe a quarter of a mile away from the school, i.e. Glencorse, to go to that school as part of a catchment area. Thirdly, over 10 years ago, Councillor Thacker, Councillor Thompson, now MP, and myself were contacted by the Education Department because they were very, very concerned about the numbers of intake at Glencorse Primary School. So we were requested at that time if we were prepared to approach the parents to see if we could mothball the school. Sounds like Groundhog Day, I know, but however, we agreed collectively, the three ward members for Midlothian West, and I'll say it again, Councillor Thacker, Councillor Thompson, now MP, and myself. The parents, or some of the parents, and we all know if somebody has one objection, then nothing can go on. Likewise, what happened this time round as well. So it was put on the back burner, Provost, members of council, and we continued on. 5, maybe 6 years ago, when another administration was party to another decision where Glencorse School again was asked, and the request was for Councillor Coventry, Councillor Thompson, now MP, and myself, if we'd be prepared to go along the road of mothballing the school. And so it became a hardy annual, so to speak. But I have not had, in this time round again, it was Councillor Parry, Councillor Winchester and myself were requested by the Education Department again to go to for permission to go to the parents and ask if they could mothball the school. There was a key opportunity there for parents to take that decision of mothballing, which meant that the options to the council were continued to be open. But the parents decided they didn't want to go that way. The Education Department looked at the number or possible number of intakes, the number of children that are there, and all of a sudden it was felt that, and rightly so, that it should go to the next stage, which was to go to a period of consultation for the closure of Glencourse Primary School. Now, this is the bit where I cannot stand by and listen to just people making statements. Provost, I have never seen so many people that had absolutely nothing to do with Glencourse Primary School. And I mentioned the Community Council, and yes, I'm quite aware this is a public meeting. I will state it, that all of a sudden the Secretary of the Community Council is hyperventilating about how dare Midlothian Council close Glencourse School. And there was a campaign started there and then. So please don't say to me, as a person that lives in Glencourse, that all those people were getting disenfranchised by the closure of Glencourse School. If that happens, it is done for education purposes. It was 3 members, as I say, the first time round agreed to go down this particular road. 3 members the second time round agreed to go down the particular road, and 3 members the last time round, which is this time, agreed to go down that particular road, and that was to mothball the school. This time round, the Education Department has taken that next step for all the right educational reasons. And the reason why I get so angst about the whole thing is I have sitting in the house beside me a former head teacher of a primary school, or primary schools in general, should I say, who's been in education for a goodly number of years and has also taught abroad as well, and has known for many, many years when we first moved there, Provost, to Glencourse, that Glencourse School was under threat 30 odd years ago. So at least finally we're making a decision, and it is a period where people will have the opportunity to readjust. I just wish all those young families that have moved into Dalmore Mill and Auchendenny had chosen to send their children, which is their rightful school, to Glencourse, and therefore we would not be having this debate today. So therefore, Provost, I'm sorry, but I cannot sit by and watch Glencourse School go the way that it's going. It has to be addressed, and the right and proper way to address it is the statutory way. We have taken every single opportunity to let those people that are affected, and let's be honest about it, those people that are affected. And Provost, I would just love to know, and I know this will not be public in the public domain, I'd love to know that the number of people that participated, how many of them had the opportunity to send their children to Glencourse School and chose not to. Sorry, Provost. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Emery. Could we have further contributions? Verona, I can't see any hands up. We then, if
there's no other hands up, Provost.
There being no further contributions, of course, there has already been extensive discussions at the Council on the subject of Glencourse. We have Councillors Parry and McCall contra to the recommendations. Councillor Muirhead, you have a seconder. Councillor Leigh Douglas seconding Councillor Muirhead. I propose that as this is a binary situation, that we take a vote on Councillor Muirhead's proposal to accept the recommendations, there being no amendment as such.
Provost, can I make a point of order?
Sure.
Could I also ask for a roll call vote, a recorded roll call vote?
Yes, you certainly can. Do we have the sufficient majority for that?
Provost, you need a third of members present. There's 17 members present, so that is 5 members would have to agree to a roll call vote.
Okay. Could you assist in indicating whether there are 5? There's 5 have put their hands, 6 now, 7 have put their hands up, so you've got sufficient. So this will be a recorded roll call vote and placed in the minutes. Can we proceed therefore on that basis? Councillor Muirhead.
Can we be sure that everybody that raised their hands was actually voting for that? Because you know, people could have been raising their hands to speak on something else.
Indeed they could. This is a joy of Teams. Could we therefore again see hands up purely on the matter of, do you want a recorded roll call vote?
I've now got 10. We
shall have a recorded roll call vote on the substantive motion by Councillor Muirhead, seconded by Councillor Leigh Douglas, the recommendation set out at page 3. Can I hand over to Democratic Services?
Councillor Johnson's got her hand up, Provost.
Councillor Johnson?
No, she's not.
Okay, I'll just read out your names, please, if you can indicate for the motion or for the amendment. Councillor Alexander.
For the motion.
Councillor Cassidy.
For the motion.
Councillor Curran.
Yeah, for the motion, which is a recommendation. Yeah.
Councillor Hackett.
For the motion.
Councillor Hardy.
For the amendment.
Councillor Imrie.
For the motion.
Councillor Johnston.
For the motion.
Councillor Leigh Douglas.
For the motion.
Councillor McCall.
For the amendment.
Councillor Milligan.
For the motion.
Councillor Muirhead.
For the motion.
Councillor Monroe.
For the amendment.
Councillor Parry.
For the amendment.
Councillor Russell.
For the motion.
Councillor Smale.
Abstain.
Councillor Wallace.
You're on mute, Joe. I'm okay now.
Yes.
For.
Are you for the motion, Councillor Wallace? Yeah.
Yes, for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Winchester.
For the motion.
Provost, that's 12 for the motion, 4 for the amendment and 1 abstention.
I declare the recommendations are carried. Before we leave these matters, perhaps it would be worthwhile if Fiona could again talk about the periods under which anybody wishing to appeal this may act with the Scottish Government, and also let us know a little bit about what the possible destiny of the property is liable to be in the process that relates to that. I know these matters are set out in the papers, but I think in terms of the public awareness, it's quite important we touch on these briefly.
Thank you, Provost. So first of all, in terms of the next steps, is that the Council has 6 days to notify the Scottish Government of its decision today. The Scottish Ministers then have an 8-week period to call in the decision that's been made by the Council. And again, if they decide to call it in, then there will be a panel convened to look at all of the documentation and a full consideration of any communications it receives in terms of the proposal and the decision taken by the Council today. Whilst I mention it's a period of 8 weeks, it is very much dependent on when the Scottish Ministers consider the decision taken by the Council today. So it's an up to 8 weeks, but we could receive the decision earlier than that, within that 8-week window. In terms of the school building, what I can confirm is that we have an agreed process in place for this. The directorate that operates the premises will consider if they require the building or land for an alternative purpose. If they do not and they declare it surplus, then other directorates and services within the Council can put together a business case for its use. And if the Council has no purposeful use for it, then it can be considered for sale. So, and again, you know, as I say, there's a process in place in terms of how the Council deals with its capital assets. I think it's imperative for me to say at this point in time that I'm very mindful of this decision on the community and the children, staff and the parents within Glencourse Primary School. As I've said, that the decision at this moment is pending on the outcome of the Scottish Minister's decision, but we will be absolutely committed to support the children, staff and the parents of the community, whatever the outcome of that Scottish Minister's decision is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parry.
Yeah, Fiona, I just wanted to ask, with your last point in mind, I completely agree that this is so sensitive. It would be really good if somebody could get in touch with some of the parents or the PTA rather than them reading this on social media. I think that would be really helpful.
Councillor Parry, I will definitely communicate that as soon as we finish this meeting today. But again, I will reiterate what the next steps are as well, so they're very clear about that.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. I very much agree with that point. It's an incredibly sensitive matter, and we need to continue to handle it with all the skill that we can. It's been a very difficult decision, as we know from the debate. There being no further contributions, I will call the meeting to a halt and thank you all very much for your participation.